Okay, alright. Mavuika. This character's gonna be fun to talk about. Hello. So it's Monday morning. Mavuika just got drip marketed last night, so I'm gonna talk a little bit about her while I do my weeklies. While she did just get drip marketed, some of you probably know that her kit has been leaked for a while. I have had enough time to develop some thoughts about her. And the thing is, it's not necessarily her that's interesting, and in fact, I'm gonna come out and say it right now. I don't like Mavuika's kit design very much. And I am going to lead this off with two big disclaimers. Number one, look at me, Risley, please. Can you please look at me during? My two big disclaimers are, number one, this is a beta kit. It is subject to change. Generally, just numbers change in different versions of beta, but technically, we could get a complete redesign. There is enough of a skeleton for her to work as a better support unit than she does. Right now, she works primarily as a DPS unit. She does a little bit of buffing, but there are enough support pieces in her kit that she could be significantly reworked within the beta updates. I doubt that that's going to happen, but it could happen. The second big disclaimer is I thought the same thing about Farina, and I was very, very wrong. I'm a little more confident on what I think about Mavuika, but I was also confident about what I thought about Farina, and I was dead wrong, so who knows. I want to be playing Aurora on teams, but since weekly bosses are single target, I'm playing Hu Tao Overload. As a little context, when Fontaine first came out and everyone was having the new HP change gimmick, I sort of thought that it was going to be what Night Soul is now. A sort of gimmicky new mechanic that only the new units can access, so that you have to pull the new units if you want to keep up with the new damage ceilings. And like I said, frankly, I was dead wrong on that fact. When Farina came out, I initially thought that I saw her HP change mechanics, and I thought that she would be an okay all-around buffer, but that Fontaine units, with their inbuilt HP change stuff, would be a lot better with her. I accidentally pressed C. I thought they would just be like significantly better than any other option because they could build up her fanfare so much faster. And while there is synergy between Farina and Fontaine units for that reason, she is more than usable with other units. And I'm really happy. Farina was a great unit for the health of the game, and she brought the damage floor of so many teams up. So I admit that I was just dead wrong about her. She's a great universal buffer. She's more than usable without other Fontaine units. And also, she provides off-field Hydro to characters who don't want to use normal attacks. Yay. So I was seeing all the fancy new mechanics, stapled to all the fancy new characters, and I admit, I got nervous. So that's what that is. I was nervous about Farina being a sign of power creep to come. And she definitely did power creep the game by just raising the damage floor on so many teams, but it was a universal buff. Because anybody can use damage percent, Farina benefited so many bad units. And that is just the nature of gacha games. In a genre where direct character buffs are very, very rare, it's difficult to buff the lower tier options without also buffing the higher tier options. So even though Farina is just a best in slot in every team now, I was sort of okay with that because she made so many other bad teams become a lot better. Now let's get into the actual topic of the video. Mavuika. The best way to describe Mavuika would be a Pyro Raiden. It is a surprisingly apt comparison because let's just go through her kit right here. Yeah, I have to look this up. It's a little more complicated. My dumbass started this video without the kit pulled up next to me. I literally bought a second monitor yesterday, and I am not using that to my advantage at all. Her skill has two versions, a tap and a hold, and the tap, it really is just a Raiden copy and paste. She even gets the little Raiden circle behind her. She summons a nice little Pyro circle, which just shoots attacks at nearby enemies automatically. So it's not a coordinated attack like Raiden's E is, but it's very similar. The notable thing is that it applies Pyro on every hit. And the hold version is the cool, sexy, flashy motorcycle version where she jumps on her motorcycle and her normal attacks become swings with her motorcycle that are Pyro infused. She goes into her Night Soul state at the beginning of either of those states, no matter if you tap or hold it, and both of them just slowly drain Night Soul points until she has none. I assume it's at the same rate. She can also freely swap between those two forms, but that's mostly an overworld thing. Oh. I haven't even used my Farina Burst. Oh my god, this is silly. Authority. Oh, that's kind of cool, right? You could use her as an off-fielder or an on-fielder. That's neat. That's kind of like saying C0 Shilinen can be used as an off-fielder or an on-fielder. I'm exaggerating. I'm really exaggerating. C0 Mavuika's off-field capabilities in this current beta state will be much better than C0 Shilinen's on-field capabilities. My point is that the priority is very clearly on the on-field portion of the ability. I've only killed 2 bosses so far. Wait. Who did I not claim from? Did I just leave somewhere? I didn't claim from Arlecchino. And why do I say that? Well, we can move on to a burst to find out that. And let's just start off with this pipe bomb of a sentence. Mavuika's elemental burst is not reliant on energy, but instead on fighting spirit. A lot of people have interpreted that to mean, oh, she doesn't need energy costs. Like, oh, that's so great. I finally don't have to build energy on my carry. I can just build her for full damage. But that's not exactly it. But because she still has a technical energy cost. And let's see how she builds it up. Her energy is instead called fighting spirit. And she can cast her burst even if she only has 50%, but she builds it in 2 ways. Either by consuming Night Soul points or by your active characters dealing normal attacks. She still has a cost to her burst, but it's not linked to energy. Frankly, we can just ignore the second part of it because let's look at some of the faster normal attackers. Ayato, Wriothesley, Yoimiya. Wriothesley, his combo takes around 4 seconds. I have played enough Wriothesley to know that off the top of my head. And he hits with 6 normal attacks, assuming, because it has such a short cooldown of 0.1 seconds, assuming that that little double hit, both of those will gain fighting spirit. This might be one of those things that it depends on your ping, but Wriothesley, he deals 6 normal attacks. If he generates fighting spirit with all of those, he's generating 9 fighting spirit across 4 seconds. Now, let's compare to Yoimiya. Let's say she does... Let's say she can do her combo in 3 seconds, which I think is a little generous. I think she's slower than that, but she hits 7 times in her combos. If all those hits generate Night Soul points, or fighting spirit, my bad, she's generating 10.5 fighting spirit across 3 seconds. Now, let's look at some Natlan units for a second. We have 3 carries, 2 of which who just naturally consume Night Soul points. Mualani and Chaska, who it's about 8 to 10 Night Soul points a second. I don't have either of them, so I'm not exactly sure. But already we can see that's a massive increase. Yoimiya, one of the fastest normal attackers in the game, is only getting around 3 fighting spirit a second only when she's on field. Mualani and Chaska both naturally are just going to generate around 8 fighting spirit a second, and they can also supplement that generation by doing normal attacks. If you get good enough with Kinich, you can just do slide E over and over and over. Every single time he uses a Scale Spiker cannon, he's using 20 Night Soul points. I pretty regularly get 5 Scale Spiker cannons. That's 100 fighting spirit in around 12 seconds. What is the duration? Is it 12 seconds? 10 seconds. That is 100 points in 10 seconds. Oran and Kachina both consume, I think, 10 every 2 or so seconds, and that's entirely off field. Dead. Cool. I dropped the beat on Arlecchino. And I actually got the mats this time. And no billets. Yeah, so yeah, technically you can gain fighting spirit through doing normal attacks. But no, you can't. The way that it's balanced, it seems like you're supposed to get most of your fighting spirit through spending Night Soul points, and then if there's any left over that you just need to pad out, you can do some normal attacks, and that'll get you a few extra points. This just makes her a less dynamic character, in my opinion. I don't want your stinky old free-to-play Thav weapons. I don't want Bennett. His battery potential isn't useful for me. To be clear, she does want Bennett. Like, Bennett's probably going to be in her best teams, which is part of why I'm so disappointed, because she's just another Pyro DPS that wants Bennett and doesn't change much. But she says, no. You want to battery me with those old units that you already built back in 1.0? No. If you want to battery me, you're going to have to pull for all the fancy new units. Okay, so I've talked about Fighting Spirit so much, but I haven't even really explained what it does, because she doesn't need full stacks to cast her burst, so she must get some benefit from building extra stacks, right? Again, this is where her kit comes back to being just like Raiden, because you can kind of think of it in this way. Raiden has her whole, what are they called? The Chakra Deschadiraga Baba Yaga Chakra Desiderata. I definitely did not pronounce that correctly. She gets this circle, and when you use your elemental burst, it starts to fill up. She gains stacks. You can see here, it's about a third full. It's a little more full. It's a little more full. Each stack of Chakra Desiderata increases the damage of the initial slash on Raiden's burst. And Mavuika is basically that on steroids. First off, it does a big funny slash, just like Raiden's burst, which I believe its damage is boosted by each stack of Fighting Spirit. But secondarily, it puts you into your infusion state, makes it so that you don't consume Night Soul points, and then boosts the base scaling of all your attacks for each point of Fighting Spirit consumed. So instead of just buffing the first slash, it buffs all of her attacks and just lets her be a free DPS without worrying about Night Soul points for 7 seconds. Which, hold on, that number sounds familiar. Does it also have a... It also has an 18-second cooldown. She also has a passive talent, Kion Gozi. This is where I think I got the maximum Fighting Spirit from. After using her burst, she applies a decaying damage bonus based on how many stacks of Fighting Spirit she used, up to 50%. And doing the math here, if each Fighting Spirit point is worth 0.25% and the maximum is 50, your maximum Fighting Spirit is 200. Which, usually you're just going to be using it for her, especially because it's a decaying bonus. So if you want to use her burst state, she's going to be the one getting most of that buff. But I will note that it lasts 20 seconds, which is longer than 7 seconds. Surprise, surprise. So there is some support utility to it. Now, her Night Soul point maximum is 80, so over a rotation, if she were to use all of her Night Soul points, which I'm not actually sure if she would, you're getting 80 Fighting Spirit points, and the maximum being 200, that is almost reaching 50%, which is what is actually needed. So, to be fair, she probably won't need another Natlan unit in her team just to cast the burst. But she absolutely will need another Natlan unit in her team if she wants to maximize her burst. Moving back to the Raiden comparison, all that she requires is high energy cost bursts, which, I mean, anybody can have those. Look at this. This is literally an international team. This is one character basically from every year of the game except for Sumeru. So Raiden, because her requirement is just high energy cost bursts, she keeps getting new teammates that can meet that requirement every single year. Mavuika will not be the same. Once Natlan stops, the amount of new teammates that she's gonna get, it's just gonna fall off a cliff. Which is really my biggest gripe with her on-field playstyle, is that it's good. She deals very good numbers. That is also something that I should really mention. Mavuika's gonna be fucking good. She's gonna deal a lot of damage, but that damage is reliant on you having another Natlan unit in your team. And frankly, I don't care how restrictive it is, because it feels scummy. It's a scummy business practice. And I do really want to say that it is fine if you like Mavuika. If you like Mavuika, I'm very happy for you. You found something in her that I couldn't. You should run far, far away with that feeling and never look back. Because if you stay too long here, I might corrupt you with my hateful thoughts. So I've talked enough about my issues with her on-field playstyle. So let's look at her off-field a little bit. As mentioned, she summons that little circle like Raiden, and then she automatically deals damage to nearby enemies. It applies Pyro in a pretty big radius. It applies Pyro every hit. And, oh, and what is the hit interval on it? 2 seconds. You know, it may not be exactly the same, but I think I've seen a similar number somewhere else. I don't want to downplay 0.5 seconds because that is a 20% decrease. Mavuika is going to apply more Pyro than Dea, but from what I've calculated, it's not enough to matter. The massive chef in the room is, of course, Xiangling. No one does it like Xiangling. Her Pyro application is unmatched. She applies Pyro every single hit, and she can hit multiple times in a second if the enemy is large enough, but her Pyronado swings at a rate of around once every second, so you're getting 1 unit of Pyro every second. It's actually a little faster than that, I think. No other Pyro character has been able to apply as much Pyro as her. It's like not even close. I think the closest we have are, you know, Dea and Thoma, who are both at a rate of around 2.5 to 2.7 seconds. And Xiangling has been the only option that is able to apply enough Pyro for a unit like Wriothesley or Ganyu to consistently get melt reactions off of. Mavuika, it's just gonna be more of the same. She does technically apply more Pyro than, you know, Dea or Thoma, but it's not enough to matter because the units like Wriothesley and Ganyu who want Pyro auras to be consistently reacting off of, they need more than 1 unit every 2 seconds. They're quickly going to override that, and then Mavuika is going to become the DPS, where Wriothesley's applying Cryo so Mavuika can melt, which if that's what you want to do, sure, but I like Wriothesley. I want to use Wriothesley. I want him to be my DPS. Again, I want to stress that Mavuika is going to be a really good unit. That melt team I described with Wriothesley is probably going to be better than especially C0 Wriothesley teams. And using Wriothesley as an on-fielder who can just apply Cryo and do a little bit of damage before Mavuika comes in and is the actual DPS, it will be good. Don't get me wrong, I love a good meat stick. Ito was the first character that I ever obsessed over. But to make the Archon of an element that has had terminal underrepresentation in the off-field department just another hit things with meat stick character, it just feels bad. I don't know, it feels bad. And all this Mavuika stuff has really made me realize that we've had the Pyro Archon all along. Here she is. Now begins my official Emily shilling campaign. If I didn't completely adore her enough before, I think she's everything now. I talked about this a lot in my Emily guide, and I really suggest you go watch that if you want a full covering of her. But Emily is the Xiangling replacement that we want, because even though she's a Dendro unit, she relies on burning to deal the vast majority of her damage, so you're gonna want a Pyro unit in her team. And what even is the burning reaction? Let's just go check it out. Alright, we go Dendro and then Pyro, and then it's just creating Pyro. That is all that it does. And, well, how much Pyro does it create? Enough Pyro for Wriothesley to consistently melt is the answer. So let's just think about what Emily does for a second. She has a long-lasting ability that is attached to her skill and doesn't require any energy. The duration is much longer than the cooldown. Her burst helps her kit work a lot more smoothly, and you are going to get way more value out of her if you do build it, but she's not useless if you don't build energy recharge. So she has that long-lasting skill that deals a lot of damage, and also it supplements your Pyro application and lets you get enough to do stuff like this. That sounds a hell of a lot like an Archon to me. That certainly is a hell of a lot like Nahida, which is maybe what I would compare Emily most to. Not just because she's Dendro, because as I've been talking about, she's really more of a Pyro unit. Her damage requires you to have Pyro and the triggering reaction that creates a lot of Pyro. So she's like an unofficial Pyro unit. Yeah, there it is. Mavuika's kit is... it's certainly something. I'm gonna finish things off here, but before I do, I really want to stress that Mavuika is going to be a really good unit. Meta-defining, maybe. If you want her, please pull for her. She will be good, she will do a lot of damage, she's cool, she has great animations, I'm sure her voice work is gonna be fantastic, and a little part of me is going to regret not pulling for her, because if you couldn't tell, I am intending to skip her. I made this video for a few reasons. Number one, I just like to complain. Number two, I wanted to clear up that misconception about she doesn't have an energy recharge cost, because the way it's being said, it really sounds like people are describing it as if it were a skill, like there's no energy at all and you just have that ability on cooldown, where really what it does is it makes energy recharge into a dead stat, but then forces you to bring a Natlan unit as a battery. I wanted to clear up that misconception about her burst. And the final thing was about Emily. If you are disappointed in Mavuika's kit, which I've seen a decent amount of people think that, I implore you, when she gets her rerun, please give Emily a shot. She is what you want. Long-term, strong off-field Pyro application. She's just tricking you into thinking that she's a Dendra unit. So yeah, that's it. If you like this one, leave a like, leave a comment, maybe subscribe if you feel like it, and I'll see you in the next one. Man, if Mavuika gets buffed to apply more Pyro, I'm gonna feel real stupid.